Everyone warned me not to go there. They said if the village learns your name, you never come back the same. I didn't believe them. Now my reflection moves before I do, and I'm not sure I'm still human. The first thing the old man said to me was, if you hear your name at night, don't answer. He didn't say it like advice. He said it like a confession. I laughed. That was my mistake. At the time, I was traveling for contenturban, legends, abandoned places, stories, people, swear aren't real until something goes wrong. Fear gets clicks. Mystery gets comments. I'd heard warnings before. Every place has its myths. Every village has an old man trying to scare outsiders, so when I asked about a village that didn't appear on any map, quick did exaggeration. Instead, the room went quiet. The shopkeeper froze mid-count. A woman near the door clutched the edge of her shawl. One man slowly stood up, paid without taking his change, and left. Others avoided my eyes like I'd asked something obscene. One elderly man finally leaned toward me and whispered a name so softly I barely heard it. Then he shook his head. I won't say it again. He muttered, crossing himself, "Names wake, Keys sings." Before I could ask what he meant, he walked away. That should have been enough to stop me. But curiosity is louder than fear, especially when you're convinced nothing bad can actually happen to you. The road to the village was barely a road at all. Cracked asphalt turned to dirt, then to something closer to a memory of a path. Fog rolled in thick and sudden, swallowing the landscape even though the sun still hung high in the sky. My phone lost signal, then GPS, then time itself seemed to threatened. Minutes of driving felt like an hour. No birds sang. No insects buzzed. Even the wind felt like it was holding its breath. When the village finally appeared, it didn't rise into view. It materialized. Houses stood crooked and uneven, pressed too close together as if they were huddling. Windows were dark, yet somehow reflective, like eyes watching from behind the glass. Doors hung open, not broken, not forced, just open, waiting. I stepped out of the car, and the silence hit me harder than the fog. It wasn't peaceful silence. It was intentional. Each house leaned slightly inward, angled toward the narrow street, giving me the unsettling feeling that the entire village was focused on my presence. I called out, half expecting someone to answer, no response, no footsteps, no voices, no signs of life. And yet the air felt warm, used, lived in. I walked past empty homes with untouched furniture inside, plates still on tables, shoes by doorways, as if everyone had stood up at the exact same moment and simply vanished. This wasn't abandonment. It was interruption. Still, I told myself I'd stay one night. Just one. I'd record everything. Prove there was nothing here but an overactive imagination and a good story. I'd leave at sunrise. That was the plan. I didn't know yet that the village had plans of its own. As the sun dipped below the trees, the temperature dropped unnaturally fast, like someone had flipped a switch. The warmth of the day vanished in seconds. My breath turned white, fogging the air in front of my face, even though it wasn't winter. The silence grew heavier, pressing down on my chest until breathing felt loud and intrusive. That's when I noticed something was wrong. Lights were turning on inside the houses, not all at once, one by one. A soft glow behind cracked windows, shadows shifting across walls, curtains moving slightly, as if brushed by unseen hands, flickering, moving, but still no people. I stood in the middle of the street, my camera shaking in my grip, slowly rotating. as I tried to spot a single human figure. Nothing. Every doorway remained empty. Every window reflected only the fog and my own silhouette. The village felt awake now. At exactly 11:11 p.m., my watch vibrated, and every light went out at once. The darkness wasn't normal. It swallowed depth and distance, turning the village into a flat, endless void. I couldn't tell where one house ended and the next began. Then I heard it, that footsteps, not running, not walking, dragging, a slow, uneven scrape against the ground. Like something being pulled that didn't want to move or couldn't. The sound circled the house I had chosen to stay in, staying just far enough away that I couldn't pinpoint its source. Slow, patient, like whatever it was already knew. I couldn't escape. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure it could hear it too. I froze beside the door, listening as the footsteps made one full loop, then another. Each time they passed, they grew closer, heavier. And then came the voices, soft at first, almost gentle. My mother's voice, calling me the way she did when I was a child, warm, worried, familiar. My best friend's laugh followed, light and careless, echoing through the street like a memory replayed too clearly. Then I heard my name, spoken perfectly, not shouted, not whispered. Said away. I say it in my head. The warning slammed back into my mind. If you hear your name at night, don't answer. My mouth went dry. Instinct screamed at me to respond, to correct the voice, to say, that's not how she sounds. But I didn't. I clamped my hand over my mouth and forced myself to breathe through my nose. Shallow and silent. The footsteps stopped. Right outside the door I could feel the presence on the other side, close enough that the wood between us felt thin, fragile. Something pressed against it, just enough to make it creak. Then a voice whispered, inches from my ear, even though no one was inside. We know you're awake. The handle twitched, and in that moment I understood something far worse than fear. Whatever was out there didn't need me to answer. It already knew who I was. At midnight the door creaked open by itself. Not suddenly, not violently, just enough to make the sound last longer than it should have. I didn't move. I couldn't. My body felt nailed to the floor, every muscle locked in place as if fear itself had weight. The air inside the room turned thick and damp, carrying a smell that didn't belong, wet soil or rust. Something old that had been buried too long. Something crossed the threshold. It wasn't fully solid. It wasn't fully shadow. Its outline wavered like heat rising from asphalt, shifting, thick, and blurring as if reality couldn't decide how to hold it. Limbs stretched and shrank. A face almost formed, then collapsed into something else. Eyes appeared where eyes shouldn't be, then vanished. It felt unfinished, like it was still choosing. The temperature dropped again, colder than before, and my breath came out in short, trembling bursts. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, drowning out everything else. And then, without speaking, it showed me the truth. Images flooded my mind, not visions, but memories that weren't mine. People standing at doors just like this one. Voices calling their names. Smiles. Relief. The moment they answered, and the moment they disappeared. That's when I understood. The village wasn't cursed. It was feeding. These things didn't hunt flesh. They didn't need blood or bones. They hunted something far more valuable: identity. They learned your voice, your memories, your face. They copied the people you loved until you trusted them enough to respond. Once you did, that was it. They were you. They walked away as you, and whatever was left behind was empty enough to be forgotten. That's why no one lived there anymore. That's why there were houses full of belongings, but no owners. That's why no one ever returned. The thing drifted closer, its shape stabilizing slightly as it steadied me. I realized with horror that parts of it were beginning to resemble the curve of my jaw, the tilt of my head, the way my shoulders slouched when I was tired. It leaned in until its face was inches from mine. I could smell damp earth and old blood on its breath. I could feel a cold pressure against my skin, like being touched by something that had never known warmth. A hand too long, too thin-pressed against my chest. Its voice came out low and layered, several tones overlapping. At once, one of us must leave. The meaning hit me harder than any scream. This wasn't a threat. It was a choice. My vision blurred. The walls seemed to stretch and bend inward, and the room spun as if it were being pulled into a void. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My last thought wasn't fear, it was the sick realization that I didn't know which of us would wake up as me, and then everything went black. I woke up at sunrise. Lying on the cracked road just outside the village, the cold was gone, the fog was gone. So were the houses where the village should have been. There were only trees, ordinary harmless-looking trees, swaying gently in the morning breeze. Birds chirped like nothing had ever been wrong. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, warm and real. For a moment, I thought I'd dreamed everything. Then I tried to stand and nearly collapsed. Panic flooded my body, and I ran. I didn't follow the road. I didn't look back. I ran through branches and thorns, tearing my clothes, ignoring the pain burning through my legs and lungs. Every shadow felt like pursuit. Every sound felt like breathing behind me. I ran until my legs finally gave out beneath me and I hit the ground, shaking, sobbing, laughing all at once. When I reached civilization hours later, people stared, not openly, not rudely, just longer than normal. A shop clerk asked if I was okay, then hesitated like she'd forgotten why she asked. A passerby stepped aside to avoid me, his eyes narrowing as if something about my presence felt wrong but unexplainable. Friends told me I looked different, thought in a dramatic way. Subtle things. My eyes didn't quite focus the same. My voice sounded flatter, like emotion was something I had to search for before using. They noticed how I paused mid-sentence, staring into space, as if I had to remember what word came next or how to say it. I laughed it off, blamed exhaustion, stress, bad sleep. But the strange things didn't stop. My reflection started lagging, behind me by a second, just enough to notice, not enough to prove. I'd turn my head, and the reflection would follow a heartbeat later. When I smiled, it felt rehearsed, and the mirror didn't always agree with the shape. Animals reacted first. Dogs growled when I passed. Cats hissed and fled. Birds went silent when I stood too close, their eyes tracking me like prey watchers a predator. At night, it got worse. My shadow didn't always match my body. Sometimes it stood straighter than I did. Sometimes its movements were delayed, anticipatory, as if it already knew what I was about to do. And sometimes, when I speak, my voice isn't mine, it slips out wrong, too calm, too layered. Like there's an echo underneath my words, barely audible, but unmistakably not me. I went to a doctor, then another. Blood tests, brain scans. psychological evaluations. Everything came back normal. They told me I was fine. But I know the truth. Something happened in that village. The thing touched me, not just my body myself. It left fingerprints somewhere deep inside, where identity lives. Or maybe it did worse. Maybe it didn't just mark me. Maybe it replaced parts of me. Sometimes I wake up unsure if the thoughts in my head are mine or learnt. Sometimes memories feel borrowed, like I'm recalling scenes from someone else's life, and the most terrifying thought of all, I don't know if I escaped that village, Dot, or if I'm the thing that finally got to leave. Last night I heard footsteps outside my room, Satin. Not rushed, slow. Dragging. The sound came from the hallway, stopping just short of my door. Each step scraped softly against the floor, like something being pulled instead of walking. I lay still in my bed, staring at the ceiling, afraid that even blinking might give me away. Then I heard it, a voice whispering my name, not distorted, not threatening, perfect. It was my own voice, same tone, same rhythm, same pauses between syllables. It said my name, the way I say it when I'm tired, when I'm alone, when I don't think anyone is listening. The handle didn't move. The voice didn't knock. It just waited. I didn't answer. I remembered the warning. I remembered the village. I remembered the thing leaning over me, deciding which parts to keep. Eventually, the footsteps dragged away, but I know that doesn't mean it's gone. If you ever hear about a village no one talks about, if you ask for directions and people suddenly fall silent if locals refuse to say its name out loud, like the word itself might here pay attention, if the road leading there disappears into fog no matter the weather, if your phone loses signal faster than it should, if the silence feels too complete and back, don't go looking for answers. Some places don't want explorers. They don't want witnesses. They want replacements. They want someone curious enough to step inside. Someone confident enough to believe they'll be the exception. Someone whose voice, memories, and face are easy to wear. And if one day I suddenly stop uploading, if my voice sounds hollow, like it's being read from a script, if my smile looks practiced instead of natural, you'll know why. Because something came back with me, Doctor. Maybe something else went back in my place. Sometimes I catch myself standing still, listening, waiting for instructions I don't remember learning. Sometimes I feel an urge to go places I've never been, to return to roads that no longer exist. And sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet, I hear footsteps behind my thoughts, slow, dragging. So, if you're watching this and thinking about searching for that village, if curiosity is whispering your name right now, don't answer, because I stayed one night in a cursed village, and something not human came back with me, and I'm not sure how much longer it's willing to pretend. Before you go, check your shadow. If it still looks right, you're safe. For now, like the video, if you felt something watching you, subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Because some warnings only come once,